In this video, we'll look at grouped frequency distributions. Grouped frequency distributions are primarily used with large data sets where it is easier to cluster data in classes more than 1 unit in width. We saw one of these when we looked at the ages of the wealthiest people in the world, and this is that chart again. In the first class, the values 27 and 35 are called class limits. 27 is the lower class limit, and 35 is the upper class limit. In some tables like this, you will also see class boundaries, which show the limits on measurements. Since this table examines ages which have natural cutoff points, class boundaries are unnecessary. Class width is found by subtracting the lower or upper limit of one class from the lower or upper limit of the next. You can also do that by subtracting the upper boundary from the lower boundary of any given class. Every class in the frequency distribution should have the same width, or analysis of the data can be skewed. Researchers must decide how many classes to use, and the width of each class being using the following rules of thumb. First, there should be between 5 and 20 classes. Second, it is preferable, though not necessary, that the class width should be an odd number. This ensures that the class midpoint, denoted x sub m, has the same place value as the data. The class midpoint is obtained by calculating the average of the upper and lower limits, or the upper and lower boundaries. Third, the classes must be mutually exclusive. They cannot overlap. Fourth, the classes must be continuous. Even if there are no points of data in a class, the class must be included in the frequency distribution. Fifth, the classes must be exhaustive. The classes must accommodate all of the data. You can't have any piece of data that's sitting out there without a class. And sixth, the classes must be equal in width. This avoids a distorted view of the data. There is an exception to Rule 6. Classes may be open-ended if the first has no lower limit and/or the last class has no upper limit. A frequency distribution with open-ended classes is called an open-ended distribution, and here are a couple of examples. In this first frequency distribution, we're looking at age and frequency, but we classify everybody age 4 or over in this 54 and above class. In the second, we were talking about the number of minutes that something takes in the frequency, and notice that the first class is below 110. So the first class here represents all data that takes less than 110 minutes. Finally, we have procedures for constructing a grouped frequency distribution. Step 1, we determine the classes. We find the highest and lowest values. We find the range, which is the difference between the highest value and the lowest value. We select the number of classes desired. We find the width by dividing the range by the number of classes and rounding up. We select a starting point and add the width to get the lower limits. We find the upper class limits, and finally we find the boundaries if necessary. Step 2, tally the data. Step 3, find the numerical frequencies from the data and find the cumulative frequencies.